recently passed was on oxygen, had an oxygen generator. These are kind of things you need to think about because they may not work for you. You may need to have an alternate plan, battery systems for them, portable generators, which would be a challenge here, but you know, between yourselves and the building management, figure out what options there are, if any, to address those type of needs. What if you have no water service? Water's probably not going to be working. You should have some stored water, and the building should probably have some stored water. What if you can't occupy your home? What if it's unsafe to be in the building? What are your options? The city will eventually provide housing, but of some kind. Sheltering is a better term than housing. Expect Lower Woodland Park to be wall-to-wall tents and manage sheltering for population of Seattle and other places. They have plans for where they're going to do this, but until it happens, they can't evaluate and say, yes, this is going to be the plan because it's going to be situationally dependent. Yes, question?
Is this building, you probably look at it, is it good?
I'm sorry?
Or
I think he wants to know the structural soundness of the building. Is the building structurally sound?
Is
that what you're asking?
I don't know the structural quality of this building. Do we know when it was built?
1966.
1966?
And
It was before the most recent earthquake or building codes for earthquakes. And earthquake standards for buildings are intended for one thing only, to allow you to live long enough to get out. It's not to allow you to stay and live here. If the building survives an earthquake and everybody can have safely evacuated, it has met the code requirement. So you may or may not be able to stay here, and you won't know that until the earthquake happens and you can assess the stability of the building. Another good person to know, if you've got one in the building, a civil engineer or a structural engineer or an architect. I can look at a building and say, ugh, but they can look at a building and say, yeah, that's probably okay, or no, I wouldn't go back in there. They've got the skill and training to do that. The average citizen doesn't. So the skill sets, so often we don't know what skills our community has, our neighbors have. I do these presentations, snap presentations for blocks of neighbors. Know your neighbors, know who they are, know what their skills are, know what they bring to the table should we have a disaster or an emergency, because you're going to be very reliant upon each other. Yes, ma'am.
I was just going to say that I know that during the planning of this building, the Alaska earthquake happened, and it affected it modified some of the planning.
Okay, so the Alaska earthquake of 1965-ish, which was a magnitude 9, so it was a really, really bad earthquake happened. The only reason it wasn't a huge disaster is because nobody lived in Alaska back then. The population was so low, density was so low. But it caused lots of physical and structural damage to roads, buildings, and so forth. So that had an influence upon the design of this building. That's good to hear. Maybe they built it above what the code was at the time, which is a good thing if they did. And I can't tell you any building in this city how safe or unsafe it is. The Emergency Operations Center was built 10 years ago, more than that, 2015. Anyway, it was designed to withstand a magnitude 9 earthquake, but it's down just east of Pioneer Square, so who knows, it may sink into the ground. Communications plan. Have a plan on how to get a hold of people. And the first thing I will tell you is, I got a whole bunch of handouts in the back of the room, and one of them is this foldout. And in the middle of that foldout is another handout, and that handout has a whole bunch of blank lines on it. And your homework is to go and fill in all those blank lines this evening or tomorrow morning. Names, phone numbers, addresses, everything you might need to know that's not going to be available to you here. We become dependent on. How many of you remember phone numbers anymore? Actually, I probably get a positive answer in this group, but you give this to any, You give it to millennials or 30-somethings or anybody else, what's a phone number? You know, because all you do is call up your contact, punch them in the nose, and ring. Yeah, you got it. So have a communications plan, have stuff written down. If these are working at all, texting is going to work a lot better than trying to call somebody. Deb here is another volunteer that does this, and if I try to call Deb after an earthquake or during the Seahawks Super Bowl parade or any other time that cell service is really limited, it's not going to work. First of all, to call her phone and my phone both have to be working on the system at the same time. Secondly, it has to set up a connection between our two phones that's just that connection while we're talking. And the system's going to be overwhelmed, it's going to be swamped. If I send her a text, that text is going to go out into it's going to sit in my phone until I have a connection. It's going to go into the cell system once my phone connects. It's going to sit in the cell system. I should stay in the camera's view. I start over here. It should go to the cell system and sit in the cell system until it finds her phone. Then it's going to send it down to her phone and she'll get the text. That might take hours or days, but it's more reliable than trying to make a voice phone call because the system's just not going to work. It's going to be so overloaded and overwhelmed. Establish text message groups. If you have a group of people and you send the text once out of your phone into the cell system, then it figures out how to get it around to everybody else. If I have a text group, it only sends it out of my phone once. The 10 times it's going to be somewhere above me. So that saves bandwidth on the system. Social media can be very valuable if it is working at all. So look to Facebook groups, look to there are websites that either exist already or will be created on the fly for disaster response. It happens in every disaster. Just use good judgment and common sense as to what you try to log into or use, but it's proven to be a very valuable way to reconnect with family, loved ones, relatives throughout the country, whatever. Don't make calls unless absolutely necessary, and I would say 911 for life or death is probably the definition of absolutely necessary. Don't waste the phone system because it's going to be overloaded to begin with. And preserve your phone battery. These things don't last very long. And they are always talking to the cellular system. This phone right now is talking to a cell site someplace nearby here. If that cell site goes off the air, my phone is going to search for another cell site farther away, and it's going to use more power to talk to that farther away cell site. And if there's no cell sites, my phone's going to sit there screaming, using all of its power, to try to find a cell site to connect to. And the battery's going to go down really fast. So, if you look at your phone and there's no bars, no signal, turn it off. I mean, all the way off. Turn it back on in a couple hours, see if you got a signal. No signal, turn it all the way off again. Not just screen off, I mean, completely off. That will save the battery. You can make this last for days and days and days if you only actually turn it on for brief periods of time when you actually need it, and keep it off. Have another way to charge your phone. You can get little portable battery packs that you can carry around, recharge your phone a half a dozen times from them. With one of those and managing your phone's use, you can make this last for weeks, but you got to be very careful about it. Trade my phone for my clicker. Insurance and government assistance. OEM put this slide in just recently. I think the main thing is insurance is FEMA and government response is not going to make you well again. It's very limited on what you can get out of it. You need to have your own insurance. You need to have earthquake protection on your insurance or flood protection or whatever it is. Most of them require separate underwriting for those hazards. It won't be included otherwise. Even living here, you don't own the building, but you are a renter basically. You should have renter's insurance to protect your personal, to recover your personal property. Know what your insurance covers and what it does not cover. And again, make sure it has the applicable riders on it to cover disasters and emergencies. Emergency alerts. Seattle has Alert Seattle, they call it. There's a card on the back deck, table in the back, a little card you can pick up. You have to sign up for this. It's voluntary. You have to opt in. Go to alert.seattle.gov. Put in your phone number, put in what kind of alerts you want to get. Texts, emails, voice calls. It can do all three. And when something's going on that the city feels urgent enough, important enough to send alerts out to the population, they will alert you. You'll get a text or whatever. Each department has the ability, police, fire, utilities, et cetera, has the ability to send these alerts. They only send them when something really important is going on. An example, if a major hazard on I-5 and the freeway's totally shut down, they would probably send an alert out. If you're getting ready to climb in your car and go someplace, it would be nice to know that before you get caught in the bottleneck. If there's a major fire or hazmat or something like that, they might geographically refine where the alert goes, but they can send alerts to neighborhoods, to areas that need to be aware of a hazard going on in the neighborhood. It's a very good system, but you have to opt into it. It's voluntary. It's free, and they don't use your information for anything other than sending these alerts. A friend of mine, a good friend of mine, is a guy that was the project manager that put this system together. They had to get the law changed in the city of Seattle. The information in Alert Seattle is not subject to public release information. Nobody can sue the city to get the database of Alert Seattle. It's private information and it will not be released under any circumstances.
I kept getting Alert Seattle things about the snowstorm when we had snowstorm about 2 years ago, the snowstorm from 2 years ago, and also the heat waves. So there's a lot of extra stuff about the city and people wanting to know, besides like I-5 being stopped for earthquakes or something like
Yeah,
that.
it can apply to all kinds of things, so thank you, Doug. It is important. It's got a lot of important notifications can come out of Alert Seattle.
Yeah.
Know your neighborhoods plan. This is really targeted to people living in the private community as opposed to people living in this building. But know your buildings plan. Apply this to here. Know this buildings plan. What disaster emergency plans do they have? What disaster emergency resources do they have? Do they have any stored food? Do they have any stored water? Do they have an emergency generator? Do they have emergency medical help? Do they have an on-staff nurse? Know what your community, and for you, your community is this building, and know your neighbors. This talks about snap blocks and block watches and emergency hubs, and we'll talk about all of them briefly. It's people helping people, because the city's got 750,000 population, and it's got a few hundred police and less than 1,000 firefighters, and they're not going to be able to help 750,000 people. You're going to have to help each other for a while. Emergency hubs. That's a grassroots citizens effort. A lady in West Seattle named Cindy Barger started hubs. You can go to seattleemergencyhubs.org and a website I founded for them, and get a map of where all the hubs are in the city, as well as on the back is a list of all the hubs. And I only brought one copy of this because I had to print it out, but I'm happy to leave it here for anybody that wants it. And anybody can go online and get it. It shows you where your hubs are, and your nearest hub around here is Green Lake Park. This building, I think, used to be a hub, a long time ago. But Green Lake Park, which is only a few blocks from here, and right now they are looking for someone to run it. So email, hubcap, and put your name here. So trust me, volunteers make a difference. That's why I'm here, that's why Deb's here. You can make a difference if you want to run that hub. There are other hubs, the map will show you where they're at. And what that is a gathering place. It's a needs and resources matching effort. That's what a hub is for. Where can I get information? Where can I find out what's going on? Where can I maybe get help from somebody? Or I've got a skill set I can bring to the table, and I'm not busy right now. I can go to the hub and say, I can do this and this. Can I be of any help? Absolutely. They'll keep you busy. Build a kit. Be prepared to be on your own for 14 days, 2 weeks. And that's the minimum amount of time. Think about what you use on a daily basis and include those items in your kit. Food. You should have enough food to last a while. I mean, not prepare 3 nice meals a day. You should have enough food to survive for 14 days. Protein bars, all kinds of things. Water. You should have some stock of water. Now, I know you're all living in relatively small apartments. Where do you put it? Wherever you can put it. How much do you stock? Whatever you can make fit. Think about where you can put excess stuff and store a little bit of extra. Don't run out today and try to buy 2 weeks worth of everything. but look at the possibilities and grow a little bit at a time until you're as prepared as you can be. How do you stay warm and dry? In the winter, Seattle, hypothermia will kill you faster than lack of water. So being able to stay warm and dry, or being able to get warm and dry if you get cold and wet, is important. A safe light source. What's not safe? Anything that burns. Candles are not a good idea after an earthquake because they have aftershocks. Knock the candle over, start the building on fire. Medication and health. I'm your generation. I may only be a couple of years younger than some of you. Every time I see my doctor, I get put on more pills. And some of them really, really matter. I have a 2-week supply, or no, I'm sorry, I have a 1-week supply of every medication I take in a small backpack that is always with me if I'm more than walking distance from home. And I've got more at home to restock that. I change those meds every month. The first Sunday of every month, when I fill all my pill things, then I change them out to my disaster, put fresh ones there, put those in my next week's supply, and it's constantly rotating. Have a supply of your medications, because there may not be a pharmacy available or a way to refill a prescription for a period of time, and it could really matter, you know, when we become mature like we are, right? Sanitation. Plumbing may not work, and a plan that can work is having 2 5-gallon buckets and some plastic bags, one of them for liquid waste, one of them for solid waste. A pee bucket, a poo bucket. And use that until some other resource comes along. Get the building to give you a place outside where you can put your carefully wrapped and sealed bags and until they can be picked up or disposed of. Where do you put all this stuff? Have a kit. Have a kit at home, in your car, at your work, wherever you have, wherever you're going to be. And again, most of you are probably relatively here as opposed to a lot of places. But if you do go other places routinely, if you go volunteer someplace and you're always, you know, at the pet shelter or at wherever, maybe have a kit there. Because you don't know, that might be when the disaster happens. And you can't get back here, at least right away. So have a get home bag, just the essentials, just what you have to get back to where you need to go. And what should be in that get home bag? Nothing more than you can carry, okay? But enough to get you back. I have a kit in my big kit at home. I have a kit in the back of my car and a kit in the back of my wife's car. And then I have my little backpack. And I'm ashamedly going to tell you I forgot to bring it with me today. But I'm within a stretch of the imagination, walking distance of home. I live in Broadview, Northwest Seattle, so I could walk home if I had to. I don't have to cross the ship canal. So have essentials with you that will help you. Short, hello? Wow, I guess my time's up.
Oh, it works again.
Yeah, this is working again, okay. Maybe the battery's low. Have essentials that you want to have with you, and it doesn't have to be a whole lot. You're not going to live out of that carry with you supply for weeks. You're going to just have it till you get to the next kit. All my backpack has to do is get me to my car or my wife's car. All that has to do is be able to get, those supplies have to do is be able to get me home or some other place where more resources are available. Some examples of what you might want on that. Well down the list is cash. I mentioned that before. We're going to become a cash-only society for some period of time, so having some cash in your emergency supplies would be a good idea. And probably smaller bills, 1s and 5s. If you walk in with a $50 or $100 bill, you're not going to get change. That Hershey bar is going to cost you $50 or $100 because they won't give you change. Have emergency phone numbers, pictures of family and pets. Have you seen my wife? She's about this tall. I don't really know how much she weighs, and even if I did, I would tell you, and she looks like this, versus, this is a picture of my wife. Have you seen her? Pictures can be very powerful. And if they're on your phone, make sure there's battery left to show them. Oh, okay. This thing is, okay, next slide. One at a time. Okay, here we go. Home hazard mitigation and retrofitting. A lot of this doesn't apply to you because of where you live, but some of it does. your unit here needs to be a safe place in an earthquake. What does that mean? That means you're not going to have a china cabinet fall over on you. You're not going to have the huge framed picture of 6 generations of your family hanging over your headboard fall on you in the middle of the night, whatever. Look at your apartment for hazards and mitigate them. I got 2 short videos here. This is actually a video that's it's a test house they built in California after the Northrop earthquake to equate to what that earthquake was and to show you what can happen in a 7-ish magnitude earthquake. And watch everything that happens in this small little living area. He said as it doesn't work. Okay, the only difference between this and a real earthquake is you don't get the warning buzzer in a real one. That gives you a good example of, boy, am I being lucky, of what can happen in an earthquake. You see what happened to the water heater, you see what happened to the file cabinet, you see what happened to tables and chairs. Anything that isn't bolted down is going to go moving, and it could become that object that hits you and hurts you in an earthquake. So, one more video on the next screen. Next slide, hello. Next slide, next slide.